You know, the idea that someone could weaponize despair online, it's chilling. But this case from Japan we're looking into today, it really shows such a dark side of human behavior. And a recent event just brought all these complex debates right back to the surface.
That's absolutely right. We're talking about Takahiro Shiraishi, the man infamously known as the Twitter killer. And the recent news is about his execution in Japan. It's a case that, well, it's stunned people globally. Not just the sheer brutality, but the uncomfortable truth it sort of forced us to look at regarding our digital lives.
Yeah. For this deep dive, we've gathered information from, reliable international sources, the Economic Times, Times of India, The Guardian, places like that. They've really covered it all, from the grim details of the crimes to his punishment, and maybe most importantly, what it all means for society. So our mission isn't just to list the facts, it's to pull out the key insights. What does this case actually tell us about vulnerability online, about mental health support, and the whole capital punishment debate in Japan, which is clearly very divided? The aim is for you, listening, to get a real sense of the profound issues involved here.
Exactly. It's about understanding the cracks, really, that this whole tragedy exposed.
Okay, so let's start with Takahiro Shiraishi himself. He was 35 when executed, but only, 26 when he committed these acts back in 2017? That age difference is quite striking in itself.
It is.
What really gets me about his method isn't just that he used social media, but how specifically he targeted vulnerabilities. How did he even find these people?
Well, a really crucial part of how he operated was social media, specifically Twitter, or X as it's called now. And he wasn't just, randomly finding victims. He was actively looking for people who were openly posting about suicidal thoughts. He essentially turned their despair against them.
That's where it feels so calculated, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sources mentioned he had 5 different Twitter accounts. One handle was Hangman, which is just incredibly disturbing.
Chilling.
And sending messages like, help them die or die together, really preying on people at their absolute lowest. It wasn't impulsive, it felt like a system.
And it wasn't just one person. Between August and October 2017, he managed to lure 9 victims to his apartment. That's 8 women and 1 man, all tragically young, between 15 and 26. These were people in immense pain looking for, some kind of connection or maybe release, and he just exploited that completely.
How did they finally catch him?
The breakthrough, it seems, came in October 2017. The police were looking into the disappearance of a 23-year-old woman. They managed to get access to her Twitter account, and that's where they found messages leading directly back to Shiraishi. It took them right to his door.
And led them to discover something truly horrific.
Yes, what they found inside. Well, it was immediately called a house of horrors. His apartment, it was in Zama, Kanagawa Prefecture, near Tokyo. It became instantly infamous around the world because of the gruesome scene inside.
I mean, the details are they're hard to even process. Sources say he raped, strangled, and then dismembered his victims.
Mm-hmm.
And then, trying to hide it all, storing body parts in coolers and boxes, sprinkled with cat litter, to cover the smell. It's just... It forces you to confront a level of depravity that's hard to fathom.
Right.
Did the investigation reveal more about how calculated this all was?
Yeah. Beyond the sheer brutality, the court found he also killed 1 woman's boyfriend specifically to silence him. That shows a real cold, premeditated calculation. It wasn't just about the initial murders.
So what were his motives then, according to the court?
Well, the primary motives were determined to be sexual and financial. He also faced charges for robbery and for the destruction and abandonment of the corpses. So this idea, his defense later pushed, that he was somehow helping people. The court saw right through that. It was about his own twisted gratification, control, and, money.
Right. Given that level of calculation, that depravity...
Yeah.
How did the justice system actually handle it? What happened once he was caught? I know he admitted guilt during the trial, which seems quite stark.
He did admit guilt, yes. But his legal team, they tried a defense strategy. They argued it was murder with consent. They claimed the victims actually wanted to die, that they were willing participants, essentially. They also brought up concerns about his mental state, probably hoping to lessen the charges, maybe avoid the death penalty.
But the judge didn't buy it at all.
No, rejected it completely. The court's language was pretty strong, calling his actions cunning and cruel. The judge specifically said he preyed on mentally fragile individuals and just fundamentally violated their dignity. So that consent argument, it went nowhere.
Okay, so the verdict.
He was sentenced to death back in December 2020, and the execution itself, by hanging, took place at the Tokyo Detention House. It was carried out secretly, which is common practice in Japan, and only announced afterwards. This was actually Japan's first execution since. Well, sources differ slightly, either July or December 2022.
And the official line?
Japan's Justice Minister, Kisuke Suzuki, confirmed the execution order was signed after a careful review. He condemned Shiraishi's motives as extremely selfish and noted the crimes caused great shock and anxiety in society.
This case really does put a spotlight on Japan's approach to capital punishment. It's interesting, when you look at public opinion, surveys consistently show really strong support, right? Something like 80 to 83% in favor.
Yeah, that's a significant majority, and it sets Japan apart. If you look at the G7 countries, the big advanced economies, it's just Japan and the United States that still actively use the death penalty.
And the method is hanging. You mentioned the secrecy, how inmates often find out only moments before, usually early in the morning.
That's the typical process, yes. It adds another layer to the criticism from human rights groups. And right now, there are around 100 to 107 inmates on death row in Japan. Nearly half of them are actually seeking retrials.
So, despite that strong public backing, there are definitely significant criticisms. You mentioned human rights groups, but also suicide prevention advocates. They argue basically that executing Shiraishi doesn't fix the underlying problems he exploited, right? They want better mental health support.
Exactly. They see it as addressing a symptom, not the cause. And then you have the victims' families. Their pain is just immense and ongoing. One father was quoted, I think, in The Guardian, saying nothing has changed. The execution, for him, couldn't heal that grief. It really shows the gap between legal justice and, well, personal healing.
That's a powerful point. And there's always the shadow of potential wrongful convictions. You hear about cases like Heval Hakamada.
Right, who spent nearly 45 years on death row before finally being exonerated. It's a stark reminder of the risks involved, the finality of it, and why many call for reform, or at least extreme caution.
And just the psychological toll. Being on death row for years, decades sometimes, often in isolation, it must be immense.
Absolutely. It raises profound questions about the human cost of the system itself, even beyond the guilt or innocence of the inmate.
We've seen Japan use capital punishment in other really high-profile, shocking cases too, haven't we?
Yes, it tends to be reserved for cases that cause major public outrage, like Tomohiro Kato, executed in 2022 for the 2008 Akihabara attack, driving a truck into people, then stabbing them. And before that, Shoko Asahara and 12 members of the Ao Shinrikyo cult, executed in 2018 for the 1995 sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway. Shiraishi's case, with its sheer horror in the way it exploited modern technology, definitely fits that pattern of exceptional cases leading to execution.
So moving beyond the horror of this specific crime, what did this case fundamentally change, if anything, about online safety conversations? Was it just about platforms tightening rules, or did it expose something deeper?
Well, it certainly forced a reckoning. It showed a critical gap, Technology moves so fast, but our ways of protecting vulnerable people online, legally and socially, they often lag behind. The Twitter killer case definitely pushed platforms like Twitter, now X, to reinforce their rules against encouraging self-harm. That was a concrete reaction.
But it feels like more than just rule changes.
I think so. The deeper insight isn't just that platforms reacted, but that this tragedy sort of reframed online despair. It wasn't just a private struggle anymore. It became this urgent public health and safety issue, something tech companies simply couldn't ignore. It highlighted how these platforms could become hunting grounds.
Exactly, and activists keep making that point. This isn't just about punishment after the fact. It highlights a huge need for better mental health infrastructure for earlier intervention. That's the real preventative measure, perhaps.
Absolutely. And so, ultimately, Shiraishi's death, his execution, it's just reignited this really complex, very public debate in Japan about their whole capital punishment system, the secrecy around it, the timing, the psychological impact on everyone involved.
It leaves us with some heavy questions, doesn't it? When you look at these incredibly extreme criminal acts, but also the profound societal vulnerabilities that were exploited, what does real justice even look like in a situation like this?
Yeah.
Especially when despair itself can be weaponized online so effectively.
And maybe what's our collective responsibility here? How do we build online spaces that are more resilient, that offer genuine support instead of becoming just another place for exploitation? There's definitely something for all of us, for you listening, to really think about long after this conversation ends.
The truth is out there, hidden in silence, blood, and fear. This was Case to Case. If you want more scary, mysterious, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Until next time, stay alert, stay curious.